Let's talk a little bit about range names and using range names as markers within your VBA code. I'm a huge proponent of using range names, and for a lot of my very big models, I could have hundreds of range names in it, which makes it easy for me to refer to in the code and also in some of the formulas, but it's a real pain to create them. So this example will show how you can use named ranges to actually create additional name ranges. Now it's helpful to note that I use some naming conventions in my range names. So for instance, I use these three here. I'm actually going to change this one because I prefer that it be three letters. So that should be dat, not data, but it references data. So let's explain what these are. LBL would be something like these headers that are around the data in this table. So this one right here, I would name Apple underscore LBL. Now many of you will have used the define name and apply names functions to actually create names, but that doesn't give me the flexibility to add these suffixes. So that's why I either do it manually like I just did, or I will write code to do it for me. This right here would be January underscore LBL. I use RNG as the suffix to indicate a row or column of related data. So this information here is all related to Apple, the Apple product. So I would call this one Apple RNG. And in my method, it's very important that you're consistent using these values over here. So anything that would be, any range that would be related to Apple would start with that word Apple. I use the data suffix, or DAT, to represent just the data in a table. Now this table is products by month, so I might decide to call it prod month or something similar, and I'll call this DAT. And then I'll do one more, which is the entire table, including the headers and the totals, and I would call that prod month TBL. It all becomes very handy later on. Now let's show you how the code works, because it took me quite a while to name these labels along the side, and then I'd have to do each one of the rows, all that kind of thing. So in order to do this, the first thing we should do is delete the couple that we created so the code doesn't choke on that. And the first thing that the code is going to require is that we actually select some labels that we want to name. So I've got two different procedures here. The first one is going to add the label name. So that would be Apple Banana Cherry underscore LBL and January through December LBL. And if I wanted to, I would include those month totals as well. All this code does is it dimensions a cell as a range, and sname and sref as strings that get substituted into the names.add method. And so you can see what happens is the first thing I do is say in the current cell of the for next, determine what the value of the cell is. So the first one is Apple, and then add to that underscore LBL. Then for the reference, figure out what the active sheet name is and add that to, or concatenate that to, the address of the cell. So the reference in this case would be sheet 1, cell A2. And then create a name with those two things. Go on to the next. So this is really quite quick. We've already highlighted our cells. We can hit play or run, and it's done. And if we go over and look, sure enough, there's Apple, there's Banana, there's Cherry. And now let's do the same thing for our months. And that's done. Let's just double check. Sure enough, Jan label, Feb label, March label. And we can go on. Now, with those in place, now we can use those as kind of markers to say, where's the beginning, where's the end, that kind of thing. Now, this is a very simple example, so you have to use your imagination a little bit of how this could really be valuable. If you've got a spreadsheet, for instance, that has hundreds of columns, and you need to know what column number certain ranges are in. If you have named that label, like I did here, January label and December label, you can use the column, the dot column property to find the column number. So what I've done is, in addition to cell sname and sref, I've dimensioned 3 integers. Col for column, column Jan, and col December to determine what are the current columns for that. And then also row prod, which is what row is the a certain label in. I've got another 4 next. So what I'll do here is I'll highlight the products, for instance, and we'll cycle through those. We'll create a name. Now it's going to have an underscore RNG. And then the reference is going to be a little bit different from the other one because we no longer want to reference that exact cell. We want to reference the range that's over to the right of it. And the way that we figure that out is using the row prod and the column integers that I created. So if we were on the Apple cell, row prod would equal 2, col Jan would equal 2, row prod is 2, col December is would be 13, and so the address of that range would be B2 to M13, or I'm sorry, M2, and that becomes our reference as a string and substitutes into there. So let's show how that works real quick. And it's done. I didn't have to select anything except for that simple set of labels. And if we go all the way across here, presto, there's Apple range. Now I like doing that because now I can put in a formula that says sum Apple range. Whoops. You're supposed to hit tab to finish that, and I didn't. So let's go find it. Apple range. Sum banana range, some cherry range, and that's pretty neat. So that's really easy to do. Now here's the real power. Now we're out of the VBA but into the power of these named ranges. Now what I can do, and I love this because this becomes very, very handy, especially when you are doing totals in a spreadsheet of other spreadsheets, ranges from other spreadsheets. As long as the ranges are the same, you can use an array formula. So watch this. I've highlighted, you can see I've highlighted the entire total range, January through December, and I could say, well, let's add up Apple range plus banana range plus cherry range. And what is so cool about this is in the first row of this selected, the first cell of this selected area, it's going to give me the sum of the first value in each of those 3 ranges. So in this case it would be 1 plus 2 plus 3. Then in the second cell it's going to give me the sum of the second value in each of those arrays, 11, 12, and 13. Now you have to enter this, since it's an array formula, using Control-Shift-Return, and there we go. And you can look up at the formula. The formula is the same all the way across. Now one reason I really love this is that I don't actually have to protect this because a user cannot delete or overwrite one cell within an array. So that's really kind of neat. So I'm in total control of that. And if I want to, I can very easily reference that formula. I know exactly what is in that formula. Hope that makes sense to you. That's it.